Hey y'all, torpedoes and tarantulas here. Welcome back. It's a day before a big American holiday. I have the day off, wandering around the house trying to kill boredom, and I decided I'll just go ahead and do my regular maintenance of my inverts. Checking water and removing uneaten food, old molds, things like that. Just kind of checking on the state of everyone. And I see a couple of things that have been bugging me for a while in my invert room, and at this point now, I feel like they deserve some attention maintenance-wise, and it's with a couple of my tarantulas. Now, these aren't necessarily going to be rehousings because they're going back in the same enclosures, but I prefer to call them, I don't know, not a rehousing, but let's say a remodel. So I've got two tarantulas that need addressing. The first one we're going to start with is one of two of the Aphonopelma annex that I got probably a month ago. If you've seen those videos, you kind of know the story behind those two. If you haven't, please feel free to go back and watch them. But for the rest of you that did, the one that was not doing so well has now, as you can see, sorry about the glare from the window outside, but as you can see, there's absolutely no sign of a burrow anywhere because this little rascal burrowed all the way down to the bottom, and as it did, it was backpiling dirt, and it's just completely closed itself in. I don't know if I can get a very good view of the bottom without halfway dumping stuff out, but you can see one small spot right there where you can just kind of make out some legs. So it's been this way for about 3 weeks. Normally you would not disturb a tarantula that has burrowed itself, but in a case like this, where it has dug all the way to the bottom and has basically buried itself, I just don't have the confidence that it can get itself back out of there. So basically all I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to take this empty 32-ounce deli cup and shovel all of the substrate from the smaller enclosure here, or the other enclosure, not smaller, into here until we get down to the bottom. Then we'll find the tarantula. We'll put it in this cup right here while I redo its enclosure, and then we'll put it right back in the same enclosure when we get done. So that's the plan. Let's see how it goes. Alright, so what I did to get ready to dig this thing out here basically is I took everything off the surface, the cork bark hide here, and the moss that I had in there. I took that out so that I can put that back on the top when I rearrange the substrate. But now I am just going to take a spoon, and we're slowly going to transfer the substrate to this other deli cup. Now, this is not going to be the tarantula's enclosure. It's going back into the enclosure that it's in, but I've got to get down to the bottom and find it. And then once I do, I'm putting all of this substrate back into this cup here, along with a starter burrow, and then I will take and put the tarantula back in there. But for right now, we just kind of slowly dig our way down till we find the tarantula. Yeah, it just completely buried itself. It adopted the burrow that I made for it for the first week or so, and then it started burrowing down, which I was excited to see because I knew it was doing better. It could dig and stuff like that. And like the other one, it burrowed all the way down to the bottom, but then there was one point there where I was gone for about 3 days for work, and when I came back, this is what I saw. There was no tunnels, no signs of holes or burrows or anything besides the one little void, basically, if you will, down here in the bottom. So that's where we're digging to. I suspect that the initial purpose for this tarantula burrowing and burying itself was for a molt, because I suspect that's the reason it was doing so poorly when it first got here, was that it was probably ready to molt. And I had actually had, there we go, we found part of its den. I actually had some viewers make some suggestions that perhaps that it was doing so badly was because it was in a pre-molt, because you know the other one did molt in transit. So here we go. We have kind of found the beginning of the tarantula's burrow or den, if you will. We're going to kind of slowly excavate this until we can find it, because we don't really want to cave in the substrate on top of the spider. I can tell you this substrate, this is the Terra Aranya by the Bio Dude. It compacts very well and is very supportive of burrows and things like that. You can see it's essentially breaking out of there in chunks, which is what Earth would do, that they naturally live in. So it's basically kind of more natural than that stupid coconut hair that everybody's still using. Now we've kind of gotten down into its den. I think that's an abdomen we're looking at. Nope, it's just more substrate down in there. So I'll keep poking around and I'll get back to you guys here in a minute. Alright, so I found it down there in the bottom. The last inch and a quarter or so of that substrate, the entire bottom of it, the tarantula was burrowed into, actually dumped out on me when I was trying to dump some of the loose stuff out. Fortunately, it was the spider was not harmed. I've now managed to isolate it from the substrate into this little cup. I'm going to redo its substrate, then I'm going to put it back in there. Because I don't know about you guys, but to me it looks like it's still in a bit of a pre-molt. So I think I will just put it back in there and leave it alone for a while. But I just wanted to make sure that it was okay and everything. I did not find a molt, so it has not molted yet. So we're going to redo its home and put it back in there and not stress it out anymore. Okay, so I've basically redone its enclosure about like it was. The piece of cork bark with a hollowed out area underneath there. Sorry with the moisture. For the tarantula to hide in. Because if it's not in a pre-molt now, I think it's going to be soon. So if it's got some room underneath there to kind of stretch out and shed its exoskeleton, then that's great. And then I just put a shallow water dish in, which I actually removed the other one because it just essentially buried it when it was doing the burrowing the last time. So here is the tarantula. I suspect this is going to go pretty smoothly. So what I'm going to try to do here is the way I got this thing out is just tickle it onto the spoon and then use the spoon to lay the tarantula back down into its enclosure, and then we'll move on to the next thing that we've got to do here. The sky wasn't like super bolty, but it did show a couple of short bursts when I was getting it out. It's still moving quite slowly and calmly though, so there it is. There's a Faunopelma Annex number 2, the one that was not doing so well. I think we're in a pre-molt, so now we're going to do away with all that glare and stuff and just go ahead and put the tarantula down here into its enclosure. And maybe it'll just crawl right off of there nice and slowly for us. And we can get around to the next project. Oh, and it poops on my spoon. Nice. Well, that was cute. Showing me what it thinks of me disturbing its home. Sorry about that, little guy. I just really had to check on you. Glad to know you're okay. There it is in its new enclosure. I have to go wash my spoon, and then I have another spider to rehouse. So hold on, guys. Okay, guys, so first off, I just want to apologize for kind of the quality of this video with the light and everything. This is kind of the best angle and light and everything I can do right now, but you can see this enclosure. To me, it's just absolutely disgusting. And it's also got cocoa fiber in it. So basically, I'm going to, like you would a house, strip this thing completely down and redo it. So some of you may know who lives in here. For the rest of you, I will give you a quick look at her. And I can tell you, and most of you will know this, if you've kept old worlds, especially baboon tarantulas, that this little clip is probably not going to be as smooth and slow and uneventful as the Faunopelma Annex was, because this is my female Harpactira pulchripes. You can see she's webbed up one corner there quite heavily, and that's just where she stays But for the first few months she was in here, she was just all over the side of the enclosure most of the time. And you can see as well, she tried to do some webbing on these plants. There just wasn't enough there. And then the substrate has just kind of kept this damp appearance the entire time. There's no mold, but I just don't like it. And then, of course, she's got all this crud on the sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take her out. I'm going to take all of this stuff out of this enclosure, clean it up, redo it, and then put her in a new home, and hopefully she'll be happier. So what we've got to do here is we're going to transfer her real quick. Let me get set up and I'll get back to you. Okay, so I'm just going to start by pulling the plants out, and this is probably going to come in one big chunk because it's all kind of webbed together. But she's been acting like she's just not happy in this enclosure. I've just felt like she's not. Like I said, for the first few months she spent more time up on the side. It's never really tried to burrow, and then you saw she tried to web those plants up, and it just wasn't much of anything. So I'm going to empty this enclosure out, wipe it down, put new substrate in, plenty of anchor points for webbing, and then we're going to put her back in there. But for right now, we have to transfer her, which is going to be a bit tricky. This is where it may get interesting. I don't know if she's going to show us the threat posture or not. I've got my little trusty catch cup, and I'm going to just try to ease her over into the middle of her enclosure, like so. Sorry guys, concentrating on the spider, didn't have you guys in the shot there. Alright, so now I'm going to try to take my piece of cardboard and just scoop her up into, oh nope, she's got other ideas. And that water dish is going to be in my way. Here we go, that's out of the way. Yep, she's on her way up. Gosh, guys, I wish I could concentrate on keeping this camera on her, but just not working out. I'm going to try having to concentrate too hard on the spider. Okay, so fortunately, the corners of this cup kind of fit into the corner of the enclosure, which she is climbing. So let's see if I can just get her to climb straight up into. There we go. There we go. All right. Sorry about the lack of view there for a while, guys. I was just really concentrating on getting her out of there. So I am going to put her in a cup, redo this enclosure, and then come back and rehouse her again. All right. So Phoebe's house is done. I've got a new substrate in there, plenty of anchor points. I took a Mopani wood branch that I had and cut it down into 3 pieces, piled it up, kind of like would be underneath, sorry about that, a tree, you know, in the scrublands, like they live in South Africa. And then a couple of pieces of vegetation. I don't think there would be a lot of vegetation, but, you know, just enough to kind of add some color and texture and some more anchor points. And I'm hoping she's going to web all of this up kind of like an OBT or something, and then just kind of live down in here. So I think she's going to like it. I have taken some of her webbing from her old enclosure and just strategically placed it throughout areas around here to encourage her webbing. So enough talking about the enclosure. Let me grab her and let's see how this goes. Fingers crossed, guys. So here she is, guys. Phoebe, my female Harpactira pulchripes. We're about to try to put her in her new enclosure. I'm thinking that it might be better to twist the cap off and just coax her from the back, from the wide end of this thing out. And of course, watch that be a very bad idea. I know that I have a little bit of a reputation for having some pretty smooth transitions on rehousings, but I keep telling people that eventually it's going to catch up with me, and somebody's going to bolt or something like that, get defensive on me and act all crazy. But what I'm going to try to do here, ideally, if I can find my paintbrush, hold on. Just a heads up, this is going to be 2 parts because this video has run quite long, so you got to see the second part and see the transfer. I hope you enjoyed the first part of this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care of yourselves and each other. God bless.